Locked On Ole Miss podcast. We talk recruiting, the lifeblood. We haven't talked football in a couple of days, and we all are hankering for more information. We'll let you know about Brycen Sanders, Jaden Rashada, and more. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Willis, at the Stephen Willis below. Brycen Sanders committed to Ole Miss. That's a big news story, a big offensive line piece, and he actually joined the party. Congratulations to him. We have a little bit of news. Jaden Rashada will be this weekend. He'll commit. He's got 7 schools. Nobody knows what's really going on. Anybody that kind of claims to know what's going on does not know what's going on. So we're not going to pick that one way or another. His brother, Roman Rashada, goes to Ole Miss. We'll see how it goes. And I believe there's also another commitment, I forget his name, that's due for this weekend. We'll see exactly how that goes. It should be a lot of fun. And an offensive line commit, it's been probably since Greg Little that a big-time offensive line commit is committed to Ole Miss. It's somebody that need to do. It's kind of a status thing. You need a high school offensive lineman to develop, to go through. Everybody likes to develop offensive linemen. They're the most developable position on the field. And Ole Miss has just kind of struggled with doing that in a while. I guess Nick Broker, technically, you could do that. Nick Broker, Jeremy James in that class of 2019. But Lane Kiffin, this will be his first go, as Matt Luke was able to do that before. So Brycen Sanders from Baylor School in Chattanooga, Tennessee, committed to Ole Miss. He's a 4-star offensive lineman. One thing you see out of high school players that commit to Ole Miss, they're good players. There's nothing that to be afraid of or ashamed of or anything. There's not a whole lot of work that needs to be done. They actually can come in and compete immediately. You know, Tysheem Johnson, Davidson Inkmanuson, that's what it was. Small classes, but they all can play. And this will be no exceptions. He's an interior offensive lineman. I expect him at guard, maybe at center. I expect him to develop over the years. He's a good player. He's a really good player. Now, I question a little bit anybody that comes out of the private school system of Tennessee or anywhere else. It's good football there. I'm not saying it's not. But I'd like to see what he looks like in a different environment. We'll put it like that. And fundamentally, he has a chance to be really good. Honestly, that's just the way it is. Fundamentally, this has a chance to be really good. And in getting him, it sends a signal to people that are coming after. There's not going to be a lot of coattails on offensive linemen. I'm not saying there are. But people will take notice. Whenever you look at their commitments, Suntarine Perkins, Marcel Reed, who probably actually does have coattails, and his coattails probably also included Brycen Sanders, by the way. Both of them Tennessee private school kids. It's going to look a little bit differently. It just is. And there's some really good players available, and I think they're going to get it. Now, this team is primarily going to do most of its work in the transfer portal. Why? Because it has to. Ole Miss can probably sign and compete with the big schools, even Texas A&M, anybody, for about 11 players. After that, they kind of run out of money. Then they can't compete anymore. But for about 11 players, I think Ole Miss can do it. After that, the transfer portal, which has a lower NIL number, and will be somewhat plug and play, somewhat mercenary type football. Because, you know, as we said all the time, welcome to the mercenary age of college football. But these high school kids are important too, and they'll be developed. And you see Ole Miss developing offensive linemen. The difference is when you hit the transfer portal and do the plug and play, everybody's like, well, why didn't the offensive linemen play? Well, they need to be developed. They need to be where they need to be. And as they go on, somebody will absolutely break through, and everybody will wonder what they were worried about to begin with. I mean, that's the way it always is. The thing with the news media and fan bases in general is exactly how it is right now is how it's going to always be. It's just a straight line. It's not going to go up. It's not going to go down. It's a straight line. And that absolutely doesn't make sense. If you look at it, it's not going to be right. And because of that, freaking out here before the straight line that everything's going to be that doesn't make much sense. Wait until the end, make a judgment. I think Mike Bianco this year taught everybody about that. Wait until the end, make a judgment. If you go early, you have a chance to look pretty bad, to embarrass yourself. And that's what's happened. It's called going off half-cocked. That's what that's called. But anyway, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Built Bar. They're doing their Mud Pie Built Bars. Got mine in the mail today. You know how our friends at Built are always coming out with amazing new flavors? Well, as this time, Built has truly outdone themselves with their new Mud Pie flavor. And for the first time ever, Built is introducing the new Mud Pie flavor in both Mud Pie and a Mud Pie Puff. Not sure what Mud Pie tastes like? Well, if you're a chocolate fan, you better sit down for this. The new Mud Pie is rich with whipped cream and chocolate mousse smothered in 100% real chocolate and topped with cookies and cream crumble. That actually really kind of sounds good. You have to give Mud Pie a try as soon as possible, and you need to hurry because this Mud Pie Bar and Mud Pie Puff are only available for a limited time. Visit Built.com to taste the deliciousness for yourself. So here's the offer. Go to Built.com. Use promo code LOCK15, all one word, LOCK15, and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So do us a favor. Go to YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications whenever a new video is available. And of course, upvote the video itself. It'll be greatly appreciated. This weekend for Omaha, we are going to do Omaha Live. We're going to start that out. We're going to go off half-cocked. It's going to get better. Don't worry if it's a little bit rough to begin with. It's going to get better. 30 to 45 minutes of Ole Miss baseball post-game talk, and we're going to head that into the football season and do post-game live there as well. We're at about 98% to our goal. We're going to hit our goal. We might hit our goal before Saturday, and we appreciate that from y'all. But thank you very, very much for being involved. It'll be interactive, by the way. There will be a chat over here that you can participate in. Everybody can see, and we'll see how it goes. So, should be a lot of fun, actually. Should be a lot of fun to do, and I'm looking forward to it, and it's going to be good. Anyway, you see the bottom of the screen, BetOnline. Ole Miss is a 21.5 point favorite over Troy in week 1. And their regular season win total is at 7.5. 7.5. What do you think about that win total going into the fall? We've done ours. We've talked everything, but it's 7.5 regular season. Now, you look at the opening games with Troy and Central Arkansas and Georgia Tech and Tulsa. That should be 4, honestly, right there. So if you think about what they're saying, Ole Miss's SEC over-under for the regular season is at 3.5. So 4-4 in the SEC would put them over. Now, you have Arkansas, you have Kentucky, you have Mississippi State. Games that will be difficult. It just will. Ole Miss should probably win those games. They're going to be difficult. And you have LSU and Auburn of games that Ole Miss should absolutely win, but traditionally they have trouble. And then you have the Texas A&M, the Alabama. So we're going to talk about this as it gets closer and after we get past Omaha, because it will be worth a conversation. But right now you can go 4 non-conference and Vanderbilt, that's 5. So you need 3 wins between Auburn, LSU, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Kentucky. Can you win 3 of those games? That becomes the question. I think you can. Spoiler alert, but it is what it is. Anyway, tune in 30 minutes post-game for Omaha Live this weekend. We're going to have Derek Vandegrift, Kara McCutcheon, and Tom Vanderford talking about what they just saw. Approximate start time will be about 10:30 Eastern, 9:30 Central, and we will talk all about Ole Miss sports, and should be a lot of fun, honestly. But we'll see how it goes. Anyway, also Zach Blackerby, who is going to be on the show a little bit later on today, volunteered to come on there as well. So we might have an Auburn person in the roost for the post-game show, so it should be pretty good. But it should be a lot of fun as it sits, but that's what we're doing. You know, we're going to talk to Zach right after this break, and he's going to tell us all what's going on. Basically, Ole Miss and Auburn are completely different teams from when they met earlier this season, and the series has a chance to be this game has a chance to be a lot of fun. So that's 7 Eastern on Saturday night, Ole Miss and Auburn in the College World Series, the last first game, I guess you could say, of the College World Series. So it should be a lot of fun. All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Hey, you can make Locked On Auburn your first listen if you want to. Anyway, our guest is Zach Blackerby, and our guests are awesome. And you can talk about how awesome our guest is when you review us on iTunes. You can leave us a 5-star review. Please do that. Say whatever you want to say. You can say Steve doesn't know what he's talking to, but Zach has the absolute right idea. Just do that for us. It'll make you very happy. Zach, I've been excited about this crossover for a couple of days. As you know, I've texted you a couple of times after you had that first win, and I was like, okay, we got to make this happen. Come on, Oregon State. Do what you need to do. Auburn, do what you need to do. Let's make this happen.
Yeah, you texted me before game 2, and it's like, hey, assuming y'all take care of business, crossover this week. I'm like, absolutely. And then Auburn drops game 2, and it's like, okay, well, I hope we get the opportunity. And man, probably the most competitive series of all the super regional contests. Took all 3 games, and all 3 games were extremely competitive, coming down to really just the last out in that Corvallis regional. But man, yeah, solid showing by Auburn's pitching staff in 2 of the 3 games, and the bats did just enough to win 2.
Yeah, before we get started, is Sonny DeShera all right? It looked like he had a little bit of a hamstring tweak in game 3.
Yeah, kind of a weird thing as he was rounding second, and then they stopped the game for a little bit as he was on third, and they never took him out. He continued to play first. He got on base his next at bat. It seems like he's okay. I don't know if it was just an adrenaline thing and he played through it, but yeah, hamstrings are tricky just because sometimes they can never really go away, but it seems like he played through it. I expect him to be a go, but no official word from Auburn at the time of this conversation, Stephen.
Yeah, and this isn't a slight against him at all, but the hamstrings this situation might affect him less. Athleticism is not his game. He's a bash guy. Yeah,
and it's worked pretty well for him. You know, SEC co-offensive player of the year. This is what the peak male athletic body looks like when you look at the thick king. But a great guy, friend of the show. He's come on the show several times throughout the season. But yeah, I mean, he's the offense starts and ends with Sonny DeShara. I mean, he hit that home run in game 1 in Corvallis, and then after that, the offense really slowed down until he hit a home run in game 3. And so that's really the key part of this Auburn offense. And so if you're Ole Miss watching, an Ole Miss fan watching or listening to this, you gotta treat Sonny DeShara different than the rest of this lineup come this Saturday's matchup.
Yeah, in the game that we played down on the Plains, he hit a home run about 500 feet, I think, against Ole Miss that weekend. And speaking of which, that series, you look at it, both staffs, it's almost like it's completely different years. It looks completely different. It's weird.
Yeah, we were talking about this before we clicked record, but Ole Miss wins game 1 6-3, and it's like, dang, okay, all right, maybe all the runs are scored for the weekend, and then no, that wasn't the case. Auburn won game 2 in Plainsman Park 19-5, and then Ole Miss took care of business 2-15. But yeah, you mentioned all of Ole Miss's starters will look different, and then Auburn, their best pitcher this season, Joseph Gonzalez, he was dealing with like an infection under his fingernail or something, and so he missed several weekends. I don't think he was a big part of that. And then Auburn's Friday starter was injured, and so they have a new Friday guy. So yeah, it's I don't think you can really look at anything that happened in that first series and say that it's relevant to this College World Series matchup on Saturday, don't you think?
No, it really. I mean, Ole Miss's starter, their ace. They didn't find their ace until probably week 6 of the SEC slate, and that was Dylan DeLucia. And he is if you think of Lance Lynn in Major League, he's like a college version of him. He makes his fastball dance in and out, and it's really kind of impressive. And then we have a true freshman named Hunter Elliott, which Auburn will not see. But he has probably turned into the true ace of this staff. If Ole Miss can get past Auburn game 2, I actually feel better about game 2 than game 1, because Hunter Elliott had basically going into the 8th inning a one hitter against Southern Mississippi in the Super Regional. Nobody can seem to put a square bat on him. I hate that him and Sonny DeShare aren't going to go at each other, because you got somebody that can just barrel up everything against somebody that doesn't let anybody barrel up stuff. It would be a heck of a battle.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to see how different coaching staffs handle the management of their pitching staffs in college postseason baseball, because, Joseph Gonzalez is Auburn's best pitcher, but he was on Sundays for the vast majority of the season. He was a game 3 guy. And everybody thought that they were going to lead off the Corvallis Super Regional with him, and it was going to go up against the best pitcher in college baseball, Oregon State's ace. And that didn't really happen. They both played on game 2. And so I'm curious to see how Butch Thompson handles this. Do they put their ace up against Ole Miss on Saturday, or do they go with a guy like Trace Bright, who only, he pitched about half of what he's normally used to, just because Oregon State got to him early and often? It's going to be fun to see how they handle that, because it's going to be a different situation than what Auburn's seen all season.
Yeah, absolutely. But like I guess the opener, Derek Diamond was the guy who led off on Friday night for Ole Miss. Yeah. He pitches on Sunday some, but now that the College World Series happened, and this might be a situation with Auburn as well, Derek Diamond might just be a bullpen guy. You might be able to go through a College World Series if you hit the winner's bracket with 2. And your bullpen and everything else will be extended. And what might be a weakness, might be in the middle ground, kind of becomes a strength a little bit. I'm kind of looking forward to that.
Yeah, I am too. And of course, the dynamic of it, it's essentially Omaha is you play a regional, and then the 2 regional winners play a super regional. That's essentially, the way Omaha is constructed. So the same mindset that you take into, regional weekend, which seems like forever ago after that, super regional weekend, took years off of my life, Stephen. But, I think winning that first game is crucial. And then if you can get in the winner's bracket and you win that winner's game, like, there's a really, really solid chance you're going to be one of the last 2 teams left when it's all said and done. And so in order to, of course, win that second game, you got to win that first game. And so do you go all in? And with Auburn, they've got a starter that they love with Joseph Gonzalez, and then they've got a middle relief guy in Carson Skipper, who has been really solid 6th, 7th, 8th inning type of guy, and then Blake Burkhalter, who I'm wearing a shirt right now, but he he's been one of the best closers throughout this SEC baseball season. Do they go all in and put those guys in against Ole Miss on Saturday, or do they do kind of what they did against Oregon State and save them for a little bit? Because Gonzalez did not start the first game of the Auburn Regional. Different situation. Ole Miss is significantly better than Southeast Louisiana. So let's no disrespect to those guys, but once again, it's just fun to see how different coaching staffs handle their pitchers and their aces at this time of the year.
Yeah, it is really cool. And it's funny on Ole Miss's side, as bad as pitching was, like after the first 2 or 3 series, Ole Miss's team ERA was around 9.
Yeah.
I mean, it was an astronomical number. And for them to figure that out, and by the end of the year, this is a pitching team. This offense last year had all their reputation. We put all those runs up at Plainsman. But this has absolutely become a pitching team. And I'm curious to see after DeLucia. I mean, you're going to you've got Jack Doherty in relief. He's that long relief guy. Mason Nichols, long relief guy. And then you've got potentially the best closer in the SEC in Brandon Johnson. He's a 98-mile-an-hour fireballer with 4 pitches. And
I got a feeling on this one. If all the runs that'll be scored in these games will be done in the first 7 innings, because both of these teams are so good at finishing games out from the mound. What are your opinions? What are your thoughts on the 2 other teams that Auburn and Ole Miss will be paired with in Omaha? Stanford and Arkansas. What are your thoughts on those teams?
My first thought is Stanford plays in a stadium that looks like it was built in 1860. I am not believing that amount of foul ground. I just sat there and watched that game against UConn. It was like, wow, that is crazy. Arkansas, though, I think we both have a good idea what we're looking at with Arkansas. I think Arkansas is going to beat Stanford.
Me too.
I think Stanford going in there and trying to mash. And both of these teams are home run teams. And that doesn't really play in Omaha because that park is so big. So a team like Ole Miss and Auburn, whoever wins that game 1, it's advantage them in that side of the bracket, I think.
Yeah, I still think Arkansas is the best team of these 4. If I had to predict, I think Arkansas gets out of bracket 2, and I really like Texas in bracket 1. Texas or Texas A&M, they're both playing their best ball right now.
Oh, that bracket! Did you see who's in that bracket?
It's crazy.
Texas A&M and Oklahoma on the same side, paired with Notre Dame. I'd hate to be a bouncer in a bar in Omaha next week.
This almost, Steven, I saw you tweet something similar to this. This almost looks like what Hoover is going to look like in 2 seasons.
Yeah, 75% of the teams in this College World Series have SEC ties. 6 out of 8. Yeah, it is absolutely unreal. And everybody says the SEC is taking credit for them. No, that's the reason I say SEC ties. They've been admitted into the conference. They're just playing in the Big 12
I think we can claim it. They're coming. That's already a done deal.
Yeah, and Oklahoma against Virginia Tech. See, I thought Virginia Tech in their super regional did a major bad karma move by selling Omaha Virginia Tech branded gear before Game 3. And I was like, Oklahoma's going to take care of this one, and they absolutely did.
Yeah, and the Virginia Tech thing, first ever super regional in program history, and they got to host it. So super cool scenario, but it's hard for these programs that haven't been before to be able to do stuff like that and be able to actually pull it off. Like that's just I'm with you. Bold move on their part, but look, Oklahoma's a really, really good team, and they're playing some good ball right now too, obviously. So I don't know if the 8 best teams that made the postseason are still here or still playing, but that's the beauty of college baseball.
There's one in Knoxville that's going to get to watch the College World Series. That it's just a shame. It really is a shame.
It is, but also their fans are just
they were insufferable. They leaned into it this year. And the baseball gods just proved that there is absolute karma. If you act like that, they will come get you.
But man, this postseason has been so fun, and obviously we're both going to think that as we cover Auburn and Ole Miss. But there has been a lot. I bet this postseason produced a lot of new college baseball fans that are going to be looking forward to next season and following it next season closer than they ever have, just because it's been electric. And ESPN's coverage of it has been really, really fun, really, really spectacular to see. And they've done a good job of pumping things up on, on their social media channels. And it's just been exposed. The sport has been exposed to a ton of new folks that maybe wouldn't typically watch college baseball. And I think that's great for the sport. I think it's great for the SEC. And Tennessee was a big part of that. I mean, sports need a villain. And man, Tennessee loved being the villain this year, and they were really, really good at it. And so it part of me is like, man, it's a little bit of a bummer that we don't get to see them in Omaha. But I'm glad there's not a chance that Auburn has to play them again.
Yeah, two things. I compared Tennessee baseball as a more lightly watched 1990 Miami. That was the year that Randall Hill shot the guns down the tunnel in the Cotton Bowl, and they had 260 yards of penalties. That's what Tennessee was this year. The other side of that is they were also really, really good. They were a generational team, and everybody talked about, well, the SEC is down this year. No, just everybody that played that team took their lumps. And because of that, their records dropped down. The top 2 or 3 teams in the SEC didn't have to play them, and there's a reason.
That's
Sorry
interesting.
about that,
I
my
haven't really
dog.
looked too far into that, but that's a great point. That's a great point. And Auburn went up there and hung with them closer than anybody else had at that point before they somehow lost that series to Kentucky. But yeah, man, this is going to be a fun. This is going to be a fun week in Omaha. I can't wait for it all to happen.
Yeah, should be really great. Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen today. Now make your second listen Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. Raphael Barlow, Richard Strayman, Sam Ferris, and Leif Thulin give fans an in-depth look at biggest prospects, the latest player rankings, and of course, big boards with the draft coming up. And Jabari Smith. He's going to be a top 3 pick, right?
He's going to be the top 1 pick, baby.
Okay.
He's going number 1 overall.
Yeah, I think he got underused at Auburn, by the way. That's a conversation for a different day.
Sure.
Anyway, follow the Locked On NBA Big Board every day on the Audacity app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Zach, man, I appreciate it. We have to do this again. Of course, being in the same division, we're going to have opportunities.
Absolutely, buddy. Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
All right, that is the Locked On Auburn podcast. Zach Blackerby, tune into them if you want to give a second listen to a program. It's a really good show. Anyway, take care, Zach, and have a good one, bud.
You too, dude.